So welcome to another episode of the Jobs for Women. Start again. So welcome to another episode of the Jobs for Women podcast. I am so excited to welcome this week's guest to the pod. We have Stef McLoughlin, who is the commercial manager at Lewes Football Club. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi Zoe, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks. I'm good. We've just both shared off camera, haven't we? How we've both sort of started the day, not really prepared to be on camera, but we're just rolling with it because that's what we do.
I'm just really happy that I'm not the only one with wet hair and no makeup on because we've just been too busy to do anything else.
I love that though. It's so real, isn't it? We have this polished ideal on social media, and it's like, let's break down that illusion that we're all supposed to be camera ready, and we can have really important conversations like this regardless of how we look. So I'm really delighted to have you here. I know we've been chatting on and off on LinkedIn. I've been sort of stalking you because I'm so interested in what you are doing at Lewes Football Club. So talk to us about your role. What do you do?
It's really hard to define my role in one sentence. So Lewes is not a massive club. We play at championship level. So our men play in the 7th tier. So our women are elite and they're professional, even though we get called grassroots all the time, which really, really annoys me. But we're still generally quite a small club. So we do quite a lot of everything really, and as well as our jobs, we all feel that we're activists as well. So we're promoting women's football and trying to raise the level and shouting out as loud as we can about everything. But generally my role as commercial manager is to bring new sponsors in, new partners in, and also to manage and take care of the amazing partners we have on board at the moment.
So obviously we're going to get into the club's decision to treat women's football the same as men's in terms of budgets and facilities and pitch time. And I love this. But obviously that money has to come from somewhere. So when you talk about bringing partners in and sponsors in, is that to fund and to keep the initiatives going?
Yeah, exactly. So out of, when you sponsor Lewes, it is a marketing initiative as well. So you get excellent ROI out of doing it. So it's not it's not a charity thing. It's a clever marketing decision. There's me putting a business spin on this. But then ultimately you're also funding our voice, and you're also, telling people in the world that the way we're doing things and doing football better and doing football for good is a way you'd like to support as well. So it is a clever marketing initiative, but it does fund our voices and everything that we're doing at Lewes Football Club.
Yeah, and that's similar to what we're doing actually at Jobs for Women. It's kind of like, it's more than just a place for companies to advertise their jobs. It's like being part of this movement, having these conversations and making a real difference. So I admire what you're doing. And off camera, I had to ask Stef whether it was pronounced Lewis or Lewes. And even my husband and I, when we were chatting last night, I said, I wonder. And we were like betting. So does that come up all the time about the pronunciation?
It does come up all the time, and it's really like I've lived in the Sussex area for a while, but I've never really quite got why people pronounce it Lewes, so it's just really funny. But yeah, it does come up all the time, and within our core fan base, there is a bit of a joke, as in if you're not a real fan, then you pronounce, and you're from overseas, and you're not perhaps coming to the club very often, that you'd be pronouncing it Lewes. So yeah, but it is Lewes.
So we all know now, everyone listening, it's Lewes. You've got the intel here. So what I want to delve into is women in football, and obviously we've seen a huge increase in popularity with the Lionesses, but I feel like at Lewes Football Club you have been sort of quite groundbreaking in making some decisions early on about this idea of paying women equally, and just bringing this, that men and women are the same and not having this differentiation. What were the initial challenges and obstacles that the club as a whole faced when implementing the equal treatment, and how did you overcome them?
So change is obviously always really hard. And I think when you have a vision for how the future could be, that maybe you can see that other people can't see, then I think that is always really hard. I wasn't around when the change first took place, but I've had multiple conversations with all the incredible people who pushed for it. And I think it was just an initial wanting to do something better, and also being able to visualize that future, and then just bringing everybody else along to it. But with everything that we do, even if it's something really small, like for instance, we did like a vegan weekend last year, so like a green weekend where all of our food was vegan, which sounds like a really small thing, but even with that, you have like voices which are, you know, like negative for tiny things that you do. So anything that you do which is different, and we like being different, and we like doing things and that nobody else is doing and thinking outside the box, but you're always going to get people who don't like change, and who, you know, question the decisions you're making and the way you yourself and the club sees that future, really.
Yeah, there's always going to be pushback, isn't there? What about the fans? How did the fans take it?
I think most of the fans were incredibly. I mean, just looking at the statistics, we now, you know, following the change in 2017, we now have owners in over 40 countries. You know, the level of sponsorship went up like incredible. You know, we have international sponsors now, which we didn't have before. So, you know, the brand and the growth of Lewes was just incredible post the change. And it's, you know, it's not just the women that benefited from that, it was the men as well. So the men now play on a Premier League level pitch, which was given to Lewes. It was an investment of £750,000 from the Premier League to invest in like a good quality Premier League level pitch, and the men wouldn't be playing on that pitch if it wasn't for, you know, the women rising to that level. So it was both the men and the women who benefited really from the changes made in 2017.
Oh, do you know, I absolutely love that, because what we talk about a lot at Jobs for Women, and we talked about it on a webinar last week, was that it's not about separating whatever gender you are. It's about a collective, isn't it? And coming together and all being part of it. So it's brilliant to hear. I love that the men benefited, because let's face it, we are all in this together. So that's brilliant, and amazing that you've had that international reach. Like that is fantastic. And I think the reaction to that is testament to this idea of equality and equity that we're all striving for and we're all interested in. So that's really exciting. What about people coming to the football club? Is that I guess the PR itself has led to more ticket sales?
Yeah, the attendances are significantly higher for again both the men and the women. So the women's increase was obviously a lot higher because there wasn't that much of an attendance before 2017, but the men's attendances increased also. So just the general following, just everything literally got better, which, you know.
It's so good. And then talk to us about the women's team. So before these changes, obviously we know we've had this conversation on in the Jobs for Women community. I've harped on enough. I was really sporty at school and I never got a chance to play football, and it really still irks me. And I've got a little girl and I want her to be able to play football, because it annoys me that just because based on gender, you would, you know, what you're exposed to at school is so important and can be the makeup, and it can spark that fire within, can't it, to think, you know, I'm going to take that on as a career, not necessarily to be a professional footballer. It might be a physio or whatever it is. So the women's team, you talked earlier about being referred to as grassroots, which is annoying, which we'll talk about. And is that do you think that idea that they're referred to as grassroots is almost like a dumbing down of their ability or level? Where does that come from?
Well, if the women team and if our championship team was a men's team and not a women's team, they would be getting probably more media time, there's obviously a lot more money involved in that. It would be more of like a substantial, nationally recognized team. So I don't think people, you know, the size we are, I don't think people quite understand what championship level means and how elite that is. So yeah, so loads of people, and it's not just, you know, this happens like on a weekly basis that we get called grassroots. You know, when people say, for instance, so we want to sponsor this team, but we'd like to also sponsor you because we'd like to be doing something that's a bit more grassroots. And I can't the amount of media, the amount of attention that this small football club gets. I mean, just in the World Cup period, we were doing around like 5-6 media pieces, and most of them were national. So, you know, the amount of recognition that we get within women's football, but then people from outside of the football world don't necessarily see that. So I think it is a kind of like dumbing down because people just generally don't understand the landscape.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like education to be done around that, isn't there? And there will always be people that have a conscious or unconscious bias towards female football players or football players that identify as being women. So I guess you're constantly up against that. What about the women's team? How do they feel about everything?
Well, our women are just, you know, super concentrated on what's happening on the pitch. You know, they're ultra professional. So, you know, they do a bit of activism themselves as well. Like last year, they ran our Equal FA Cup campaign, which was fighting for equal prize money within the FA Cup, which up until last year was 90% less to what the men were getting. So, you know, they fight of things off the pitch as well. When it's needed, but you know, they're all professional footballers fully concentrating on what's happening on the pitch. So yeah,
it's powerful, isn't it, when you can use your position. Like, that's incredible that they're doing that. And I know the Lionesses were doing stuff off the pitch like that, you know, to help various groups in society, getting girls into football, but also, yeah, using their voice to better and to move things forward. And how have other clubs, like UK or internationally, responded to the amazing work that you are doing at Lewes?
We do get like quite a lot of like informal positive feedback. I mean, one of the things I love about the stadium when you visit is we have a wall which is full of scarves, and all of the scarves come from like different teams from all over the world. And when people visit from other clubs, whether they're a fan, whether they're somebody who works for the club, they donate a scarf from their club to just show solidarity and show that they like what we're doing. So that's what I love, showing off our scarves wall. So yeah, so we do get, you know, lots of positive feedback in general from loads of places around the world, which is really bizarre for a small town. Like, you know,
but doesn't that just show the waves that you're making? Like, you know, taking those small steps for a club. Then what was, obviously that's a huge financial, you know, to pay the teams equally. Was that a massive decision internally to you know, because finances, we all know, balancing whether it's personal or business, it's we're all up against this challenge. So I feel so passionately about what you're doing. It's just amazing. But was that a much bigger decision internally? And how hard of a decision was it to make?
So again, I wasn't here when that decision was made, so I only know the bits and pieces from the people who were involved at the time are still involved at the club. Some of them informally. So it was an absolute massive decision. But in order to make money, you need to be investing money, and you need to be putting money into it. So you know, women's football is essentially a startup. So there's already a lot of money that's being made from it, but it's got so much potential, and there's so much money people could be making from it. But you need to invest first, because nobody makes money out of nothing. So I think it was an initial investment that turned out to be a great investment, because look at where, you know, the women's team are at the moment, and you know where we stand at the moment in the championship. We're at a great place at the moment. So you know, you can't make money without investing money, can you? So
I love that. I love the idea of it being like a startup, because you're so right. The potential is absolutely huge. I mean, we can see it in men's football. So it is a great idea that, you know, for anyone listening that's potentially thinking of working with you maybe, or just looking at what you're doing, it's kind of like, be part of the conversation and be part of it early on. And this is, again, when we're banging the drum at Jobs for Women, it's kind of like, let's have these conversations to make the change. Are other clubs trying to replicate the model, or are they just looking fondly on, thinking, wow, they're doing a great job, but we're just going to stay put and keep doing what we're doing? What's the general feeling out there?
Well, at the moment, we still are the only semi-professional or professional football club in the world that's doing equality and equity. And Zoe, can I just say, it's not just people look at, especially with all of the like trolls you get online, you get a lot of where's the money coming from? And oh my goodness, you need so much money to do this. But a lot of the changes that can take place don't cost any money whatsoever. So you don't like respect doesn't cost anything, and respect comes in all forms. So for instance, if you go on any website, so check the team you support, whatever team that is, look at their website. Are the women's team getting equal representation on that website? With the last kit launch where the women included, did the women also get a video? Did the women get similar photos? On Instagram, what are the handles? Is it team and then team women, or is it, like with us, it's Lewes men and Lewes women? And these things don't cost anything. It doesn't cost, respect doesn't cost a thing. With the way that on most websites as well, for like most big teams, you get like your men's teams, and then you get like all of your youth teams, and then you get your women's team on like the fourth tab. Like what are the tabs like? Have you got your men's team and have you got your women's team? With representation in the media as well, like if you've got your PR team working on making sure your teams are out there, are you working to get your women's team really out there in the media? Because at the moment, outside of a big tournament, women's sports only gets around 10% of visibility online. So so what are we doing to make sure we're women's sports are getting that equal representation as well? And none of this costs money. So
that is such great advice, because that's advice to like you and I. So whoever I support, going on the website and just doing a little bit of digging to see what's happening internally. That's so powerful, isn't it? And this is where my frustration kicks in. Like when you talked about going on the website and the women are like right at the bottom, a tiny little section, or on another page entirely. It's like, let's be part of the conversation. Yeah, that's some great advice, and also good advice to anyone that's looking on for what you're doing at Lewes Football Club and thinking, how could we implement that? Yeah, it's actually, let's just start with the basics. Let's change the conversation. And what do you think about the future of women's football as a whole? Obviously, we've talked about, the scope, if we're thinking about it as a startup. What does the future hold for women's football? Or more specifically, if it's easier, what's the future for the women's team at Lewes FC?
Well, we work really, really hard to bring more investment in and to bring more money and bring more sponsors in, and to to elevate our women's team as much as possible. We are striving to get into the WSL, and that's we in our rules it says we want to play football at the highest level possible. So we've still got like one level to go. But that's that's on the pitch, and then off the pitch to just carry on using our voice as much as possible, and to try convince people that this is the way forward, and the most powerful way you can change the world is by using your money. And that could be buying a shirt, buying an ownership, using some of your marketing budget towards women's sports. So the way we use our money is really powerful. So and part of my role is to convince people to use their money for this. So
yeah, well, you're doing a good job. And then just to jump back, I know I talked a little bit about, which I always seem to get in, about me not doing football at school. For the women's team, is there a routine? We have lots of listeners that have children, lots of women at different stages in their career. What is the best way in? Is it just playing football at school? And then for the women's team, how did they find themselves in the position? Because they've done so well to get to where they are now, based on when we look at it historically. It was challenging, wasn't it? It wasn't as easy. If you were a man, it was a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of the women who play, all of that age group, really, the women who play football at elite level in this country and abroad, I think all of them had to, you know, like our team captain Rhian cleverly speaks about having to travel. I think it was an hour and a half to go to training when she was younger. So all of them have like incredible dedication, and they managed to, you know, cross every obstacle to play. So, you know, I don't think any of them had it incredibly easy. So, you know, it's a little bit easier now, obviously. But yeah, I think it's perseverance for most people who play at elite level, really.
Yeah, and I guess just the opportunity to play. This is what we keep coming back to, isn't it? It's like we all should have the same opportunities, and we're talking about football boots and a football. And
yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
And it comes down to that representation as well. So, you know, if somebody's scrolling on social media, looking at newspapers, if the images that you're seeing as a 12-year-old girl is just images of men, and then only 10% of those images are women, I mean, you can't become what you don't see. So it comes down to that. Are we doing enough, you know, on our socials? You know, if you're a company who's listening to this, you know, if you've got like male models, male spokespeople, and you don't have like enough women and enough active women on your social media, like you're part of that problem, because you have the power to give representation.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like what we said earlier about that representation of the women's team being side by side along the men's, and not different or positioned differently on the website, or with a not have as much, you know, activity on the social media. It's about like coming together, isn't it? Well, thank you so much for joining us. I find it so fascinating, and I said at the beginning that I was kind of stalking you because I love what you are doing at Lewes. I think it's so refreshing that we're making these changes, and I think that loads of organisations are going to follow suit. So if people want to connect with you, where is the best place to find you?
So we've got our socials, Lewes FC Women and Lewes FC Men, on all socials, on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. You can follow us on LinkedIn if you're a business as well. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super busy. It was such a pleasure to meet you and to chat to you, and keep doing what you are doing.
Oh, you too, Zoe. Speak soon.